we good? All right. Chairman Teague.
Thank you, Commissioner McMillan. I think we've taken a brief pause and then a break. And I notice there's some people here that also would like to be recognized. Somebody shuffled me up here. I guess I'll start. Professor Robert Brewer, Wildlife Society.
It'll be played.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let me get this. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time. My name is Robert Brewer. I represent the Cleveland State Student Chapter of the Wildlife Society and the Cleveland, Tennessee Chapter of Delta Waterfowl. They've asked me to come speak on their behalf. I've got a few points, things that haven't been brought up yet. One, this proposed season has been vetted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Mississippi Flyway Council, two organizations made up of professional biologists. They'd never propose a season if they thought there was going to be a significant impact on the population. Two, this is not an either-or situation. Hunting and crane viewing can occur simultaneously. The way the proposed season is set, it will have minimal, if any, impact on the crane viewing at Hiwassee Refuge. Along those lines, hunting is already allowed around the refuge during the Crane Days Festival. Hiwassee Refuge itself only exists because hunters took it upon themselves to tax themselves through the Pittman-Robertson Act, and those funds that hunters have paid and continue to pay continue to support that refuge. So it's the hunters' dollars that have supplied the habitat and allowed the recovery of this population. Fourth, when this topic came up 2 years ago, the non-consumptive groups were tasked with bringing a workable compromise back to this commission. Coming back to the commission and saying no hunting whatsoever is not a compromise in any shape, form, or fashion. There is no workable compromise that's been brought back to the table. And finally, we as hunters and biologists aren't asking for anything new. Several other states already have crane seasons, including our neighbor to the north, Kentucky. It has had minimal impact on the population under these season guidelines. This hunt will have minimal impact on our population and will allow Tennessee sportsmen and women to enjoy another game species to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. Next, I think Mr. Frank Duff in the audience.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Frank Duff. My wife Libby and I have a 200-acre farm adjacent. It borders the Hiwassee Refuge. It's a quarter of a mile from the viewing area, and it's east of the viewing area. So the sandhill cranes leave the refuge and come right over our farm every day. They roost on Lick Creek and on the sandbars of Lick Creek and fly back and forth all day long. I am a farmer. We plant about 80 to 100 acres of row crop every year: corn, sunflowers, wheat, millet, etc. We planted 25,000 trees over the last 5 years. My wife, farm, and I, we love the nature. We have wood duck boxes, we have bluebird houses, we have hummingbird feeders, we have bird feeders 12 months out of the year. So we love the wildlife, and our wildlife is what that farm's all about. And also, I'm a hunter. I'm very proud of that fact. My wife is a hunter. We both have lifetime hunting licenses, and we definitely support a season. And the main reasons are this. The cranes eat everything. I heard a presentation earlier that said, there was no depredation with cranes. There is depredation with cranes. I've talked to over 100 farmers. I've talked to 60 farms represented, and they farm over 20,000 acres in western Bradley County, Meigs County, Ray County, and northern Hamilton County. There might be somebody out there that, doesn't want a season, but the farmers were in agreement that they wanted a season because they thought it would help the predation on their crops. They eat everything. Cold day, wintertime, you can't keep them out of a cornfield. And if you look at the refuge, over the last 15 years, the number of ducks, as you well know, has declined, and the sandhill crane numbers have escalated. I personally think that, because I hunt in all different states. We hunt in Canada, we've hunted in the Dakotas, we've hunted in Louisiana, we hunt in Arkansas, we hunt in Mississippi, we've hunted ducks everywhere, and the ducks are migrating. We just want them to come to Hiwassee. And I think the hunters want them to come to Hiwassee. And I just think the sandhills have had a big bearing on them not coming, because they eat up all the food. You might say, well, there's some things you need to do, Mr. Duff. We've tried them. We've tried the streamers. We've tried the shooting the flares in the air. We've tried the tinsel you put around the field to try to scare them. My next door neighbor, Sidney and Alan Newbert, he's a dairy farmer, or he's a cattle farmer and raises hay and some row crop. He bought a cannon last year. And this cannon would literally go off every 15 to 20 minutes all day long. Now, we're in his next door neighbor. It sounded like a 12-gauge shotgun going off in our front yard. So he was nice enough to stop the cannons. But you also, over the years, in 2009, 10, and 11, Libby and I received or purchased a depredation permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And basically, it doesn't work. And I'll tell you what happens. With the depredation permit, you can't shoot from a blind, you can't shoot them from a pit, you can't shoot them from a tree line, you can't shoot them with any concealment. So, what do? You got 10, you got 15, you got 100, you got 1,000. Sometimes we'll have 5,000 cranes in a field. You walk or you drive your truck to that field. You get out of your vehicle, they fly off. You know, you got your gun in your hand, you shoot in the air, you might shoot one. But really, these are very smart birds. I mean, they're much smarter than a duck or a goose, in my opinion. When you shoot and you're in that field or anywhere near that field, they are going to leave. But as soon as you leave the field, they come right back. So you can do this all day long, and they keep coming back. They're relentless. That's what my problem is. And if you do shoot a crane with a depredation permit, you don't pick them up in the field. You leave them in the field, just to rot in the field. So I don't think they work. The reason I really support a season is that it would give, and I think this has already been said, hunters in East Tennessee another species to hunt. There are too many cranes, 100,000 cranes, not 80,000. There are, and I haven't seen this figure, I don't believe today, the 5-year survey that TWRA took, they averaged over 23,000 cranes on that refuge. The numbers are growing. I don't know where the national numbers come from, but on our property and on properties adjacent to us, the numbers are growing. And if we had a season, I know it would help. They destroy the farmers' livelihood and their crops, and farmers don't have time to harass these birds all day long. They eat everything for all the other wildlife. You know, during the wintertime, corn and the other grains, they just center on this, they center on corn, the sandhill cranes do, and there's nothing left for anything else. The migratory birds like the ducks, the resident turkeys, deer, everything, the ducks, geese, they eat all their food up. And I think this is the fair statement. In talking with the wildlife officers in those counties, they are unanimous in supporting a season because they get these same complaints. I'm sure the refuge managers say exactly the same thing. So what I would propose with the hunting, and this is how you can control the birds, I feel, is that hunting in a traditional manner with, concealment, a blind, maybe decoys, maybe calls, it would help control this situation. Because hunters could be there all day long when a farmer doesn't have time all day long to monitor the birds. I thank you very much. I will say this. There is a big problem on the refuge right now. Jason Jackson's here also, and it pertains to the deer. And the depredation of those deer this year is unbelievable. They've probably eaten close to 50% of that refuge up. And I don't know why. You would think on a year when it's, you got a good growing season, that would be, you wouldn't have much predation, but the predation on that refuge and my farm next to it is awful. So in closing, thank you for letting me say a few words, and good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. Monty Holcomb? Holcomb, excuse me.
Mr. Chairman McMillan, Chairman Teague, Director Carter. My name is Monty Howell, and I'm here basically representing myself. And I'm here because I actually have a foot in both sides of this debate. My wife and I are both very, very avid birders. We've birded from Alaska to the Caribbean. I've taught ornithology courses. I taught a birding course at Maryville College at one time. I'm a strong believer in multiple use concepts of the resources. I don't see this as an either-or situation. It is certainly not mutually exclusive. Like Mr. Dubke mentioned earlier about the Nature Conservancy, I was the person who started the Tennessee Heritage Program some time ago, and I was also present at the first meeting when we were beginning the chapter of the Nature Conservancy. We're still members of the Nature Conservancy. I'm a member of the Highland Rim chapter of the Tennessee Ornithological Society. I belong to the Cornell University of Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology, and there's other organizations I belong to as well, including the National Wildlife Federation. But the largest part of my career, I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I had the opportunity to work, again, from Alaska all the way down through the Caribbean. I flew waterfowl surveys. I was an agent pilot in Louisiana. I flew waterfowl surveys throughout the Gulf Coast region, flew waterfowl surveys up through the Dakotas, Minnesota, up into Canada for several years. Taught some basic waterfowl as well as non-game identification to our special agents and other organizations. I do believe that I've heard some of the comments about the whooping cranes and the concern for those, and those are legitimate concerns. In fact, 3 years ago, my wife and I were up at Patuxent where these whoopers are actually raised and fledged, and we were tearing out briars and cutting down trees and some of the pens in which these birds hopefully were going to be used. I know I sat through many of the Flyway Council meetings. I started out, I was also at one time the acting regional director and an acting deputy regional director for the Southeast region of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I was a special agent in charge in Atlanta, Georgia for 10 years. At that time, we in the Division of Law Enforcement were responsible for issuing depredation permits, issuing waterfowl sale and disposal permits, special purpose permits, which allowed literally the euthanization of thousands of blackbirds that were creating problems, health problems, serious problems for us, for humans and other individuals. There's also been quite a bit of conversation about the surveys that were done. And I have some serious concerns about those kinds of surveys. First of all, when you ask someone, do you think we should, if you just ask the question, should we hunt a particular species, without actually having a plan in front of them of saying, this is what we want to do, these are the sandhill cranes, and this is what our agency is proposing to do if we have a hunt, I think you will get a lot more intelligent responses to that than if you just ask someone, do you think we should hunt sandhill cranes? Because I think most folks here do not know what sandhill cranes are in this state of Tennessee. I do. I've worked throughout the Dakotas all the way into Texas. I've worked some sandhill cranes. I've worked in Nebraska. I was one of the folks that would shut down a hunt sometimes if a whooping crane got onto a national wildlife refuge. I assigned agents the responsibility of investigating when bald eagles were shot or a whooping crane. And my experience has been that the whooping cranes may be shot, but it's not always accidental. It's intentional shooting, and I think we lose quite a few of those through other sources other than just hunters. That's about all I want to say. I did hear some remarks about why don't we, hunt dogs or red-tailed hawks. These are game species. They are known as the sirloin in the sky. I've talked to folks that eat them. They're very, very good. Red-tailed hawks, I don't know, maybe some of the Cajuns I worked with would have an opinion about what they taste like, but it's not a game species. And if there's any questions or any other comments, Chairman, I'd be glad to answer those. But thank you for your time. I also want to commend Director Carter for being so patient over the last couple of years and soliciting this kind of information and giving the opportunity for those of us on both sides of the fence to bring this forth. I've worked with the majority of wildlife agencies in the United States. I've worked with the Canadians, the Mexicans, the Thais, and many others nationally and internationally, regionally. And I have not found an organization that is open and works as hard to actually get the information to the public and give the public the input that Director Carter and this group does. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. I would like to reiterate, please refrain from directly trying to rebuke, if that's the right word, or answer opinions of other people. Feel free to come deliver any information that you see fit. And if you have questions, direct them towards us and we'll try to get them answered. But we're still in my committee, and I don't want to get into a back and forth. People have different opinions and different information, but feel free to come forward and speak your piece. And like I said, if you have a question, ask it and we'll answer it. Let's see, who's next? Mike Butler. Mike's the CEO of the Tennessee Wildlife Federation.
Thank you, Chairman Teague, Chairman McMillan. A lot of what I was going to say has already been said, so I'll be as brief as possible. Our position from the beginning has been that the resource is large enough to support all uses. To take a position that says that it can only support one type of use is to offer the public a false choice. So we strongly encourage and support the hunt. It is proven in 15 other states, and the information that's been shared with you, that these things, in 8 of those states, they have active viewing and hunting taking place. They can coexist. They do coexist. They have coexisted. The biology is sound. The concerns regarding whooping cranes, I've shared that information with you. One thing I think is important to point out, a couple of pieces of information that haven't been stated. We are strongly opposed to any geographical closure of a season on private lands. What I don't know has been pointed out is that you're closing the Hiawassee Refuge, which is entirely appropriate. That's nearly 8,000 acres, I believe, 5,500 acres of water, 2,500 acres of property. So that needs to be considered, that y'all are already taking steps to close a sizable chunk of land and take it out of the availability of hunters. I think it's also important to point out, when I talk to the Fish and Wildlife Service, and this is a real problem for our members and supporters, around 1,200 cranes have been killed in the Mississippi Flyway with depredation tags. That's 1,200 cranes that have been killed and had to leave lie and rot. You look at the harvest in Kentucky last year, 92 birds. The year before, 50 birds. We're not going to harvest anywhere near what the service has already told people they could shoot under depredation. It'll take us years to reach 1,200 birds. And during that time of depredation tags being issued, the population grew, and it grew dramatically. And so there is no real biological question in debate here, in our opinion. I guess in closing, It's been 3 years since our board brought the unanimous board resolution to request this season. And I think that the one immutable fact is that since the beginning of time, mankind has hunted. And we have hunted for a long time, and it's a very passionate part of those of us that hunt. It's a very passionate part of who we are and what we do. Of all the things that are around, these things can coexist, and we can work together and enjoy this resource under what my friend Monty Howell said is the multiple use concept. And with that, I'll yield the floor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, that's right. Let's see. Someone from the Farm Bureau, like to.
I think you had me
Eugene
down on
or-
the list. I'm Stephen Maupin
Okay,
with
Stephen.
Tennessee Farm Bureau, and we've already submitted a formal statement supporting a season. We had several farmers that wanted to be here today that just couldn't because of the wet weather, and they have to get in the field. Rain's coming in, but one was able to make it. And it's okay, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to yield my time spot to Mr. McCauley to come speak to you all.
Thank you, Commissioner, for the opportunity. My name is Eugene McCauley, resident of Birchwood. Our farm lies approximately 1.5 to 2 miles outside the radius of the Hiawassee Refuge. Like I say, I'm a lifelong resident. I'm 52 years old, and from the time I was a teenager, we experienced a very small amount of the sandhill cranes. Dramatically today, now we have blue fields that we have to reseed in the spring where they completely will eradicate our clover. This is an important crop to our hay that we raise our cattle with. I am an avid hunter. I've tried to cross lines with the bird watchers and certainly welcome them to share the experience of viewing wildlife. That is in no intent to cease that opportunity. I was very grateful to see the Vicky's pictures come up because I was there in those pictures with her. I took her out for a day and then sharing the blind, we set up to view them. I certainly realize that's a grand opportunity. But when you live with them every day that they're there and see the detrimental impact they have on different things, and I don't want to reiterate anything that's already been said, but they are a very, very competitive species. I can remember as a young adult on up into the 80s, our refuge was full of waterfowl each and every year. The reservoir barely held all of them. Now it's almost the reverse to see the population of what waterfowl exists there compared to the cranes now. It's virtually done a flip. So I want to strongly recommend, I have several fellow farmers in the area that share the same concerns. We have to work. We don't always get to be out and be vocal. And we might not get that depredation permit. We just resow our fields with no help. It's just a burden to us. And again, I strongly recommend that we begin the season.
Thank you. Anybody else? Let's see. I recognize Senator Mike Bell, who'd like to speak to everyone.
I appreciate it. I think the last time I saw most of you, the tables were turned. I believe I was at the rostrum and y'all were in the audience, but I'm sure. But I do appreciate the opportunity to be here before you today. Chairman McMillan, Chairman Teague, members of the committee, and I will also preface this with I wrote these remarks down because I wanted to stick to what I wanted to say instead of having the opportunity to ramble. I thank you for extending to me the courtesy of addressing the commission today. I know you've already heard much testimony both for and against the Sandhill crane hunting proposal. so I'll try to make my remarks as brief as possible. For those on the commission, and for the sake of those in the audience who do not know, I represent the 9th Senatorial District, which includes Bradley, Polk, McMinn, Monroe, and Meigs County, where the Hiwassee Refuge is. Chairman, I could talk today about the science and the management plan behind the proposed hunt, but you've already heard from people who know much more about that than I do. I could speak of the numerous landowners in Meigs and Ray County that I've had conversations with who support this proposal. I could speak of the farmers who tell me that the sandhills come in such numbers that they eat all the leftover grain and food, leaving almost nothing else for the rest of our wildlife. I could speak of the 15 states where these birds are already hunted without the doomsday predictions some who oppose this plan have espoused. I could mention the other states where crane festivals and hunting are already coincide, and I could speak of my own personal experience of duck hunting in the Moon Slough and Armstrong Ferry region growing up in the 70s and 80s, and about how when the sandhills came in, the waterfowl left for the most part. I could speak for a while on any of these subjects, but I won't today. Instead, I'd like to address the commission on what I see is truly at the very heart of the decision that you have to make. And that is, are we going to base how we decide on what we hunt and fish by public opinion and emotion, or are we going to do it by science and best management practices? If you've not noticed, a war has begun and has been started in this country by radical animal rights groups against traditional hunting and wildlife management. In 2006, after the state of Michigan had reinstated dove hunting, HSUS and other animal rights groups spent millions of dollars on a referendum campaign to ban the taking of doves. Even though the citizens and hunters were outspent 3-1, the radicals were defeated by a 69-31 vote at the ballot box. But then the next skirmish started. This time it was in California, where again the radicals decided to take on the hunters who pursued bears and mountain lions with dogs. And they won by getting a referendum passed. And what has been a time-honored tradition in California is now banned by law. Now, many would say I'm overreacting by comparing this current situation, or our current proposal, to what happened in these states, but I would respectfully disagree. If you, the commission, start making your decisions based not on policy, not on science, and not on best management practices, but on emotion and how much pressure the public puts on you, we will be starting down a road that will eventually end with deciding what we hunt and fish by public opinion. And some might say, what's the danger in that? Well, as much as I enjoy listening to and watching the beagles run rabbits on my farm, and as much as I'm blessed by watching the world awake as I'm sitting in my tree stand, and as much as I love the beauty of the outdoors and the exercise I get pursuing game, a successful hunt for me usually ends up with an animal dying. We can't get around that fact of hunting or fishing. We also need to recognize that there are groups out there that would like to put an end to the harvesting of wildlife. Now, I'm not saying anybody, and I hope they'll hear this, I'm not saying anybody in our audience today represents one of these groups, but I'm telling you, these organizations are watching you today. They're watching this commission today. And they are looking to see if you can be swayed by public opinion. I'm afraid if we start deciding what is and is not hunted and fished by public pressure, we will see those battles in other states eventually come here. And I wouldn't say that this issue is a cannon shot across the bow by the anti-hunters, but I promise you that while the radicals may not be involved in this particular fight, they are watching. Well, I appreciate the job you do, and as an elected official, I understand what it's like to get the phone calls and the letters. I'll probably get a few after today. But I hope you will listen to the science and the experts at TWRA, and I hope you will vote in favor of the proposal in front of you. Mr. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to address the commission.
Thank you, Senator Bell. I've got some comments. First, I'd like to thank everybody who came today to express their knowledge and their opinions on this subject. Obviously, it's an important one, or we wouldn't have taken this much time today and all the weeks and months and years leading up to this. After much consideration, I feel like now is the right time to create a sandhill crane season. Our hunters deserve an opportunity to pursue these birds, and the biology shows that a limited hunt will not negatively impact the resource. I feel that it's possible to hunt sandhill cranes and also have a successful Sandhill Crane Festival where TWRA is a presenting sponsor. I believe we can have a hunt that rewards our hunters and is also sensitive to the concerns of the bird watching community, as well as address concerns of landowners and farmers in the area. That's my opinion on the subject. It's something I didn't come to lightly, and I feel like it's the right thing to do, personally.
Chairman Teague, being on the Wildlife Committee, I'd like to make a motion to add the agency's Sandhill Crane recommendations as an amendment to Proclamation 1311, the waterfowl season. And if I get a second on that, I'd like to justify my opinion.
Okay, do I have a second? I have a second. I have a motion and a second to add a Sandhill Crane season to the proclamation, which will be voted on tomorrow. Now it's time for discussion from the commission, so if you,
All right. In my opinion, I just don't see that we're taking anything away from anybody. We're giving an opportunity to the hunters and to the agricultural community to protect their livelihood. The festival is still going to be supported. The cranes are still going to be here, and I've heard arguments that that we're going to scare them off and everything else. Well, they're hunting right against the festival right now and shooting all during the festival, and I've also heard arguments that we're going to endanger the whooping crane, which I think we're taking every effort that we possibly can by amending the shooting hours and also the education programs that we're putting out there to protect the whooping cranes. And according to the TOS statistics there, the majority of the whooping crane sightings at the refuge were decidedly after the hunting season where we were proposing, and we're also, to protect the resources, we are limiting the season and the shooting hours, and I think we're doing everything we can, but we're not taking anything away from the cranes. They're still going to be there. They're still coming through, and there's the opportunity still there to watch them, and we're just giving another opportunity and another economic impact to our state. Thank you.
What I'd like for you to do, Chairman Teague, is go back. It's on. I might not be here. Is to go back and look at what we were just talking about. I mean, look at the compromise from the original proposal, from that to what we're doing now. In other words, the light, the start of the day, the short day for hunting, those kinds of things, the bag limit, the amount of permits. Can I hear that one more time?
yeah, I have Gray, you mind coming forward and
Yeah, I'd like to
and
hear that.
reiterating the proposal as far as length of season, number of permits,
There you go.
hours of shooting.
just
You
pull
can
this
note
back
the
up.
size of the refuge, land and water, and just to make sure everybody
Okay.
knows exactly what we are proposing.
All right, is this on? I got to squat in here. Season dates, what we proposed is up here. The original was a 60-day season, which would go with the late waterfowl season, which would have started on the 28th of November as it is, but would have run until the 26th of January at the end of standard closing. Hunting hours, the original proposal was standard waterfowl season, so half an hour before sunrise,
to end of day, so full waterfowl hours. We did have a closure. How did that work? We did have some closures on public lands. Yeah, it was a closure on all public lands at 3 o'clock. And then one little small piece of private land that we had done. But the 3 o'clock closure covers all that, gets that away. The zone remains unchanged. The permits, now we have 400. The original was 775 by three permits. It was 770 packets of 3 permits, which was for a total of 2,325 permits would have been issued. The draw stayed the same. Leftover and all looks to have stayed the same. All the check-in, that was just all the administrative things. And then, yeah, pretty much everything else stayed the same. But those were the closures that we did, or the conservatisms that we did.
Thank you very much.
Greg, I got one question. That 3 p.m. closing, now that was public and private lands for Sandhill Cranes, wasn't it?
That is correct. That is
Okay,
correct.
So it was all land, didn't it?
The federal, could you repeat again exactly what the federal, the Fish and Wildlife recommendations for a closing time was originally?
The original was standard waterfowl for private lands, and then public lands would have closed at 3 o'clock.
Could you state the standard waterfowl closure for people that may not?
Half an hour before till half an hour after. Sundown.
Right. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I know it changes sometimes. We have
Yeah,
different
my bad.
regulations at different WMAs, but I think our point to note on record is that we don't view having a season as eradication of a species. We view it as a small opportunity for another user group. We manage all our resources for multiple user groups when it does not hurt the resource and when it does not negatively impact the enjoyment of other user groups as well. And in this scenario, I don't feel like it does that. I feel like we're doing the right thing. Any other discussion? Commissioner Cox.
I had a good bit more to say, but I think Senator Bell pretty covered my principal argument about hunting. I would like to address the gentleman, the gracious gentleman from Kentucky, that, and I'm paraphrasing, that challenged what our reputation or what the agency's reputation would be if we passed this sandhill crane hunt. And I would submit to you that in Tennessee, I would think the reputation of this agency is unchallenged and unblemished. This agency in the last 50 years has restored populations of turkey and deer and various other animals that didn't exist when I was a teenager in my area. I have butted heads with them to try to get things done many times, and I can tell you without fail they are defensive of the resources of this state. So I think after this, while I certainly appreciate the bird people, I had a great uncle that just died 2 weeks ago that was a big birder, and I enjoyed being around him. I certainly wouldn't want us to upset and poke you in the eye with this to upset anybody. But there's room for everybody, and I started not to even talk, but I was a little bit offended by the challenge that this agency's reputation would be besmirched because of this, and I would submit that it will not be. That's all I've got, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have any other discussion? Mr. Chairman, Mr. Cannon.
Not on the committee, but I do want to say that from the birding community and the hunting community, I truly appreciate how respectful the comments and the letters have been. You always get a few that are out there. That's going to happen. But the way that this whole process has been conducted, I applaud you. I truly do, because we've seen the other side before as well. I do support this. My time hopefully will come tomorrow. And I do hope that we can partner as you offered if we'd had a no vote. I think it's going to take partnering regardless of the vote to make good things continue to happen in this state between the birding community, the hunting community, and the fishing community. and I hope that this will not dampen that one iota. But I do thank both groups.
More discussion? Yes, ma'am. Please come to the mic so our audio.
My question is, if a whooping crane is shot, is there a penalty?
Go ahead, I can answer that, but.
Monty probably knows all the technical details, but the basic premise of this is it's not an open season for those species, so there would be some ramifications, but the ramifications are not the same as killing an endangered species. Being an experimental season or an experimental population, all of those associated penalties with killing an endangered species are removed, and so, but there are specific penalties. Is that a fair assessment, Monty?
Yes, it is, but there's still several $1,000s of penalties available as well as jail time, and I can guarantee you that it could be a federal investigation as well as a state.
My understanding, the ones that have been done, they look very closely at what happened and make sure it's maximum penalties.
Yes, sir.
Trey, Commissioner, thanks for putting this together and allowing everybody to come in and talk, because I really, Dr. McMillan, last time we had this meeting, one of the things that you proposed is that we all come together for a compromise. That was how the meeting 2 years ago adjourned. I want you know, Mike and I talk a lot, and Frank and Alan are both on the board of Tennessee Wildlife Federation, but my great uncle started the Tennessee Conservation League at the Reed House in Chattanooga, which ultimately formed the TWRA. And the purpose of that meeting, if you go back and read in the books, was because when we talk about the depredation of these species, when we talk about the turkeys and the cranes and the ducks and the things that happened back in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, was because we took the position as individuals that we owned those birds and that we owned that game. Well, you know, the earth owns that game, and it's our position, and my position is that, and you know, I don't know many rogue hunters. You know, I just don't. I mean, most of the people that I hang with give tremendous amount of money and resources to preservation of species. Alan has all of his land in a conservation easement. Frank and I have our land in conservation easements, coming in conservation easements right now. So the compromise is not anti-hunting, and we view y'all's volunteerism as a public service to take care of just the wonderful bounty that we have to be able to enjoy, not to view, but also to hunt. But I also want to make sure that we all understand that the way, and Dr. Anderson said, you know, when he was talking about the duck numbers, he talked about the great run-up and that we were 33% long-term average. The one thing he said that I wrote down and put quotes around was that we managed through adaptive changes, meaning that you meet and you review the science and you try to figure out where to set those numbers because you want to preserve the species. From a bird standpoint, I love viewing the birds as well, and I love hunting birds. So I don't particularly. I've shot one deer in my life and really don't kind of get it. Okay, but a lot of people love to shoot deer, but the science clearly from our ground science, and one other piece of science that I hope you present to the full commission tomorrow is the work of Frank Duff, because I'm going to tell you, Frank Duff's data that he gave you, he's been on the ground, and he's been on the ground all through the county talking to the farmers about what's going on. And when I think about what you asked us to do last time was a compromise, there is one area of compromise I wish we might consider. And that is, first, the gentlelady that talked from the Ornithological Society, that they raised $25,000 from the Crane Festival last year and gave $4,500 back to the refuge. Well, I know the challenges that you guys face on trying to come up with the money to plant the refuge. It's really tough to come up with that money. I would ask that on these permits that you consider a fee of maybe $50 to buy the permit. That fee goes, if you sold 400, you'd raise $20,000, and that goes back into the coffers to help plant the refuge and support the cranes. And also that the Tennessee Ornithological Society also consider, since they are raising the money, $25,000 at the Crane Festival, they might consider giving the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency a little bit more money so we can have more money to support all of the habitat on that refuge. Thanks.
The $25,000 that I mentioned was donations that the TOS raised to support the expenses of the Crane Festival. $17,000 was the profit, including that $25,000. And so they're using it like an endowment fund, and that's why we're careful about what to spend initially. But it's to help promote the cranes and to do research and also to help support the refuge.
Like I say, I'm Ken Dubke, and like I say, in fact, Monty there, I didn't even recognize him from way back, Nature Conservancy and all that kind of stuff. But I think the basic thing here, and I've never said that I'm against hunting, okay? I want to drive that into your head. However, I am saying there's a short-term look, and I don't care if you shoot 50 or 100 cranes. But the long term, when I say, and I'm quoting Roger Applegate, the bobwhite quail man, said, we've got to have big acreage. And he said, I think in terms of 100 years. And say down our way, they've come up with the Thrive 55, which is hopefully TWRA is in there at 2 feet on that whole area in southeast Tennessee and 3 counties in Georgia. So what I'm doing is saying, yes, we shoot some cranes, but remember, the bobwhite quail and the turkey, they're all tuckered out after 1 hour. The ducks can get up and leave, and that's what they do. Just because you go duck hunting one time doesn't mean they're all there all the time, or the same thing on the cranes. And they're already migrating down. They've got a good population of a couple thousand down at the Wheeler Refuge. So what I'm going to say is, in summary, think of money. Money, money, money. Thank you.
We haven't heard yet today.
I'm sorry for coming back up. I apologize for that, but I know one of the main concerns for both sides in this debate is the population numbers. And my experience has been that probably one of the best things that can happen to a species is for it to move into the game ranks, because there's millions of dollars then at the federal level in the various states across the United States they're going to put into actually continuing the research and the development. If you look at the money that goes into non-game programs versus the money that goes into game programs, it is substantially different. And I think, I know the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I know that the state of Tennessee and Kentucky and others will be focusing a tremendous amount of attention on this species. And I don't think those of us who are birders are going to let you do anything differently than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman McMillan.
I just want to end this before y'all do take a vote by saying that I'm proud of this commission. I'm proud of Trey, how he's handled the day, and I appreciate the way the public has responded. It could have been more of a confrontational discussion. This agency and this commission has not taken this decision lightly. very proud of how the agency has handled it. I'm proud of the fact that the commission and the agency sees that there's more to this bird than just determine if we can view it or determine if we want to hunt it. There's sensitivity in both levels, and I think we've done a good job with that. I think that Director Carter and agency have come up with a good solution to hopefully show that this bird can be hunted in a controlled fashion, but also the people that enjoy viewing it and watching it and can still have the festival and still do that. You know, it's a 3-year experimental season, and so obviously we're going to treat this resource just like we do all of our resources, and we're going to go with sound biology, and we're going to continue to monitor it. And in my opinion, like Monty says, is that once you get hunting involved in it, there's going to be more people that are interested in it and making sure it's preserved properly. So I think, in my opinion, because we're doing such a minimal hunt, the bird is actually going to proliferate and actually grow in numbers, and is going to be healthier while taking care of our farmers too. So if anything, I'll be very surprised once festival time's here if there are not more birds on the Hiwassee for the viewing to take place. So I do thank everyone. It's been a long afternoon. We've got a long ways to go. Obviously, the actual vote will not be tomorrow, but I guess at this time, if there's no more discussion, then we'll turn it back to Chairman Teague to take a vote within the Wildlife Committee.
Chairman Millen, you said this was an experimental season. I must have missed that. I didn't understand that this was a 3-year experimental season.
Am I not correct?
Thought that was in Kentucky.
I thought that was Kentucky. I didn't think that was Tennessee.
I thought that that's what that the federals approached us with also.
Yeah, all eastern population hunts are going in when the feds approve them. They go into a 3-year experimental cycle. And once they go out of that 3-year cycle, then they can go, I can't think of the name of it, but they'll go into an annual, just like we do our regular duck seasons after that, if we so choose. But right now, and that's what all the hunter diary stuff, all of the additional tagging is making sure our hunt has no impact on that population. So we'll go through that 3-year cycle and then move forward.
Chairman Bledsoe, would you like to restate the motion just for record?
Okay.
Put you on the spot.
I said I would like to make a motion to add the agency's Sandhill Crane recommendations as an amendment to Proclamation 13-11, waterfowl season.
All right, and I had a second on that.
Mr. Watson, Commissioner Watson.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor of the amendment to Proclamation 13-11 say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. The amendment to add the amendment to add Sandhill Crane season to Proclamation 13-11 has passed the Wildlife Management Committee and will be voted on tomorrow by the full commission. Does anyone else have any announcements concerning wildlife management? That concludes our business for today. Chairman McMillan, thank you.
All right, at this time, we're going to move to the Fishery Management Committee. I'm going to call on Chairperson Jim Bledsoe.
Let's take a break.
We need a pause. All right, we're going to take a 10-minute